Hi, and welcome to Serenity Now, a place for entrepreneurs to ask questions, learn, get connected, and be inspired. Join us as we talk about all things business and the search for the ever-elusive Serenity Now in both business and personal life.
Welcome to another episode of Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs. I'm Candice Nanka, and today I have my Serenity sister, Peggy, on back with me. Peggy, why don't you why don't you introduce our guest today?
I'd love to. So today we have a client of mine, and her name is Tara Latham. She's with the Sugarhouse Creative, or I should say formerly with Sugarhouse Creative, and now with the Formative Group. And I'm going to turn it right over to Tara to tell us a bit about your own background and where you were with your company.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. Thanks for the intro. So I've spent the last 20 years working in product creation, both on the brand side. So I worked for some large brands, Arc'teryx, Black Diamond, and then I started my own agency where we consulted for brands, both large and small. And I would say in general, what we did was we helped brands bring products to market from almost idea to commercialization. So we specialize in advanced R&D, but also bringing products through the pipeline of what's a fairly complex, especially in the apparel sector, commercialization process and making sure that's as effective and successful as possible. And then Sugarhouse, my agency that I ran for a decade, we just wrapped this up into a new group called Formative Group, where we're focusing more on high-level strategy when it comes to product creation, but also the design of the business itself. So that's successful and aligned with values that matter inside and outside the company.
You had told me when we had a conversation not that long ago about a point in time when your company had a bit of a pause. It was when there was some global uncertainty out there back in November 2024, was a date you had mentioned. And you were saying that it actually was a break between contracts that you hadn't normally seen. And it was somewhat due to the uncertainty out there politically. And you guys took this as an opportunity. I'd like to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to go even slightly farther back, we all experienced some uncertainty during COVID, which, was 2019. And really, for all intents and purposes for our company, it was 2020. But actually, COVID was really powerful for our business. We were operating outside of physical spaces. And so we actually grew during that time. And after COVID, we became quite busy with work. And, often you get wrapped up in the day-to-day. And so our company never experienced any break in contracts. Our contracts were often over 2 years and overlapping quite a bit. And so as we saw the administration change happening in the US, we heard from our clients that this would be something that they would be considering when it came to their contract. And so we were pre-warned by months that this was going to change the industry. And it did. Everybody, at least in the product creation industry, I would say took a collective, let's wait and see about advanced concepts, about new product creation and things like that, because everyone was quite uncertain what would happen with the tariffs and how that would impact their business. And then so we had the opportunity that we knew well in advance that our contracts would be winding down almost all at the same time. And you know what? Because we had forewarning, I think it was really, again, not easy, but it was beneficial for us to think about what we could do differently to make sure that we're still adding value to companies going through this kind of stuff.
You're right, though. Sometimes you get so busy doing the day-to-day, you forget to sort of sit back and look at the business as a whole and what direction you might be going. You just keep running in the same direction because you're so busy. You run off your feet. So you did have that time to pause and take a look at everything.
Well, and I think sometimes we start these businesses because we love what we do. And that's in the case of myself. I came from product creation. And so I started this business not from a business background, but from a product creation background. And so taking time to think about the strategic operations of the business itself was something that I had to learn along the way over the decade that I operated my business, because I'm a product designer by trade. So I think that was really meaningful, and I certainly learned a lot along the way. Seeing these things play out in real time was incredibly impactful. And also witnessing what brands need to do going forward to work within this new landscape that we're experiencing with global trade, I think is also a really interesting challenge.
So was it actually the imposition of the tariffs that were causing people to pause, or did they put tariffs on your product? Like what was it exactly?
Many of the brands that we work with, tariffs will affect their delivery. But I would say, from our perspective, it was what I call the collective uncertainty. Companies just didn't know what was going to come. And they certainly knew that there was going to be some changes because that was clear within the political landscape. And I think you also have to think about where we were within the product creation cycle. We were brought in as an outside agency to brands that were already quite successful to help them with their sort of new, most innovative product lines, line extensions, advanced R&D, things that kind of like pinnacle styles. Often because we were out of house, we have sort of fresh eyes on what could be really meaningful for the brands. And because regular operations and regular product delivery is the core of what they do, what we do felt superfluous, let's say, at this time where people were just collectively uncertain. And so that's what we saw.
So you're taking a pause to look at your business as a whole, and they're going into the business as usual and just run with it every day. That seems kind of ironic, actually, to me. But
yeah, but I mean, to survive, I think a lot of brands need to do that right now. However, in my experience, I see often a lot of innovation happen during these times, right? We cut away sort of the excess and then maybe we insulate and start to innovate within our own brand. So sometimes the best and most creative and innovative products are conceptualized during these downturns or whatever you want to call it. And so it's exciting to see what brands are now doing now that we've recovered. Like it's been almost a year, but I think everybody's starting to see what they can do and what kind of resources they do have and how they can bounce back. We saw the same thing with COVID, where everyone was uncertain for a good 6 months. And then all of a sudden everyone said, oh, okay, this is how we're going to participate in this.
I thought what you said about COVID was really relevant, though, because I saw it in many, many businesses that there was a lot of success during COVID. And I don't totally understand what it was that caused it, but I did see that many, many businesses, well, of course, we had some retail failures, restaurants, small businesses like that. But a lot of the manufacturing sector, the tech sector, they just boomed during COVID. I don't really have an explanation for that, but I wondered if the same was true during this slowdown. Certainly at first, it is a slowdown. I have clients who have told me they've lost 60% of their sales, laid off that many of their employees, and I have other clients, in sort of the 33% range. So there's definitely companies that are feeling it, and definitely there's time for a pause, I'm sure, in all those businesses and time to look another direction. So when you guys discovered this, I love the word that you used. You said it was an opportunity. What was your process for your pivot? What did you pull out to help you with that?
First of all, we just shaved off everything that was not necessary. So we operated an R&D facility. We had many staff members and things like that. And so right away, we got rid of our space and all these things that didn't seem to be necessary going forward. So that, that kind of stuff is hard, but also freeing, right? To kind of look at what kind of business models could be going forward. And then I think most importantly, we started to just go higher up. We're projecting higher up on the product creation cycle. So previously our business worked right in the middle. A brand would have a vision and they would have an idea of what they'd like to make. And then they would come to us and we would basically help them from everything from their idea all the way through to delivery of commercial products. A lot of staff is needed. We need a lot of tools to do that type of work. We need a lot of physical infrastructure to do that type of work. And as we saw that not being needed as much in the industry, we are starting to now work strategically with leaders and founders on how they can best facilitate those tools within their own companies. And then we got to shave off a lot of that excess within our own company. So that was a real learning experience for me, as I said, a sort of a new business person, to realize that all of that overhead was really holding us back from pivoting. And then once we got out of it, we were free to be, we're kind of working working anywhere on the product creation cycle that we felt we could have the most effect. And so then we started working with founders and design leaders and things like that, which has actually been, ultimately more rewarding work for myself and my team.
I would think you'd be able to affect, because your contracts aren't going to be 2 years anymore. I'm thinking it's shorter, so you can affect more change actually with more people, I would think. So
for sure. I think a lot of the time we're working one-on-one with leaders and with especially design leaders. And then the other thing that we loved doing when we were working within the product creation cycle was workshops. So we would do, design-led workshops where we would bring a full design team in, and we would do sort of here's the ideas on the table. How do we actually bring out the best ideas as a group? So we love doing that with our brands. And so now we just do that.
Oh. Well, that's
the stuff that we loved. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like you took a lot of the excess out of the process and nailed it down to a place you're really happy to work in. That's a really, really nice, successful outcome for a time that could have been very disastrous. We talked about something else the other day when you and I were chatting. I think we got into a little bit of discussion about the manufacturing being mostly offshore now. You guys would have a very close connection to that. And something that you said resonated with me. And we talked about, the desire with all these tariffs and also with Canada looking inward now, rather than looking we're trying to be more self-sufficient, I guess, do things in Canada. And you mentioned that we just don't have the skills for a lot of this. And that's why now a lot of companies still continue to use China and other places to manufacture. How does that work into your new organization as it is? Do you have to be involved in that? Do you bring it home now, or how does it work?
So I'll speak from my area of expertise, which is performance technical apparel, just because I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret that. So let's be clear that my expertise is in the performance outerwear and technical knitwear side of things. So we really don't manufacture much of that in North America. And we started exporting materials, mills, knit houses, and all sort of like piece good facilities, probably like in the 80s, right? We started in the 1980s. We started to export that into other countries. And because of that, it's a really complex process when we're think about something like a ski jacket, right? It's an incredibly complex item to make. And there's materials mills required. There's probably about 150 trim goods in a very complex ski jacket that you need to consider. And all of those things need to be made well, because as Canadians and especially outdoor enthusiasts, we have an incredibly high expectation of quality of goods. And the people who are specialists in making this stuff really well, they don't live in this country anymore. They live usually overseas. And there's little pockets as well. Like, for instance, Portugal, strangely enough, is a very, very, Portugal and Turkey have wonderful knitwear facilities, really highly technical 3D knitting facilities. And China was sort of the place where waterproof breathables were brought to very, very, very high quality. And so when we talk about exporting an industry like this to North America, I love that Canadians are thinking about this and where goods are made. But when it says made in China on the back of the jacket, that does not tell the whole picture. That's just where the last parts were put together. That jacket has elements from all over the world made in little pockets of places where they make things specially. And then it's all brought together in a place where they are very highly trained to do that activity exactly. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about, because I'm not against bringing manufacturing back to Canada. I think it's a wonderful thing to think about. But we have a lot of work to do in onshoring our manufacturing capabilities here in this country.
That's exactly what I was thinking when all this discussions started over the tariffs and doing things in our own country. You articulated it so well the other day when you were telling me about it. And I thought, that is so relevant that we can't just overnight start to manufacture all these. We don't have the skill sets. Will we get them? How do we get them? And when can we get them? There's a big gap.
And then I guess I'll say one other super controversial thing, and maybe not so much with Canada, but with the USA. If you partner that with stopping immigration, then that's another problem, because if you look in local factories, many of those factory workers are not born in our country. Now, some of them are, and I don't want to be, generalizing, but, I worked for a company, Arterix, that has local manufacturing in Burnaby, and they always have, and they've always made products within the Vancouver area. However, most of the folks that work in the factory came from manufacturing overseas because that's where they were trained to be good, really, really technical factory staff.
Well, that's just another way of bringing the expertise home, isn't it? Is to bring the people that have the expertise here. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And even thinking about the idea of building good quality or establishing what good quality means, when we were establishing what good quality production means when I was working at Arterix, that was done in conjunction with an overseas manufacturer. We had the expertise and they had the expertise, and the creation of what quality even means in this product category was done in a collaborative setting with both folks that live in China and folks that live in Canada.
Well, it sounds like an interesting dilemma, that's for sure. Okay.
Nothing black and white anymore.
No, I've never had so many conversations about where products are made and how they're made, and so many people interested in this topic. And so I think that any level of education and interest that the global community has on how products actually are created, we'll get through this. And hopefully the silver lining is that we actually do bring some specialized manufacturing back to our country, and that produces great jobs and really successful and strong companies. That would be a wonderful byproduct of what we're seeing out there.
I agree. I think we let a lot of our manufacturing go overseas. And I remember kind of the exit was really, really prominent in the 90s. And I had a lot of manufacturing clients, and I remember a lot of them outsourcing manufacturing to China. We did let a lot of that go. I always believed, though, that we would keep the high-tech manufacturing here, much like Germany. But I don't think we did we?
Not in my sector. I mean, I would just say that, it was always a funny thing when people would say, oh, it's made in China. That means it's not good quality. And I would just say, well, depends on what product, because if it's a Gore-Tex jacket, then I think made in China means that you've got the best quality. So
interesting.
It's just a funny thing that people often will say things like that. And, there's certain places that specialize in different types of manufacturing and are very good at what they do, like the Portugal example, where there's cycling shorts for road cycling, like the padded shorts. There's a handful of factories in Portugal that make almost all of the padded road cycling shorts in the world.
Interesting. Well, I think we've come to that point in the podcast where we can wrap it up with a little quick fire. Quick fire is just generally we're going to go around and see if anyone has any extra thoughts, any points to take away from the conversation today. And I'm going to start with Candice.
Well, I'm thinking this conversation, the disruption brings innovation concept. And I'm always excited by innovation, and I love to see things being improved and whatnot. So even though, COVID and political uncertainty, it creates disruption, there's lots of opportunity that comes from it. And, instead of trudging along, all of a sudden we're thinking of ways to make things better so that we can survive that disruption. So I love seeing what comes out of that.
I'm going to add that was a key takeaway for me too. You guys did something that was really brave during a time when you could have rolled it all up and took it all home. You guys stopped and pivoted, and that's really powerful. And I do think it makes us better. And it sounds like you guys are having a lot of fun now. Sounds like you got to the place where you really enjoy the aspects of the work that you do. And I really enjoyed your thoughts on the manufacturing as well. It touches on my business a lot, and it's interesting, your comments on that. So I'm going to turn it over to you to just give us any last thoughts you have, Tara.
I love talking about this, and I think your interest in how this affects us locally is really important. Like what Canada can do to participate. We have so much talent here in Canada. We certainly will be getting more talent as folks from different countries want to come and move to this beautiful country. And I think making sure that we have the infrastructure, resources, and talent to keep all of that happening within our country is something I'm super passionate about. And we don't want to just be a partner. We want to be an innovator. We want to be a leader. And I think Canada has a massive opportunity right now to both fund, this is just a message to the government, to fund innovation, and also to make it possible for really talented people to move here and do their great work here. So that's a win-win-win, I think, for our industry. So I'm really excited to see what we do, and happy to talk about it anytime.
So for Canada, we have a moment to pivot as well. And we can take this as an opportunity, right?
Yeah. Mark Carney, are you listening?
Yeah.
I think that's right. It's so important that small businesses have some security from both our country and the people around them to actually take these risks, right?
Right. And it's a time when risk may seem hard to take with all of the lost revenues from our trading partner that has been so reliable in the past. Yeah.
Alrighty. So thank you for joining us today, Tara and Peggy. If you or somebody you know can take some information from this podcast, maybe they're going through a period of uncertainty and maybe it's an opportunity for them to pivot and innovate as well. Hopefully you can share it with somebody and give them some serenity now.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur you know some serenity now.